Sciences at MSU. She got her BBM from Western College of Medicine in Saskatoon, worked in private practice for a while, and then came to MSU for a large animal residency and a master's degree. She continues as a member of the faculty of MSU, currently works in equine medicine, as well as goats. Yes, goats, sheep, cattle, all medicine. Judy is all medicine. In 2005, she received the Spirit of Tucker Award, which recognizes individuals devoted to the veterinary profession who demonstrate willingness to share and teach, an optimistic outlook on life, recurring benevolence, and a cooperative spirit. So with that, I introduce Dr. Judy Meyer.
Thank you, and for those of you in the audience that don't know me, I also have sheep and goats at home. I've had them for about 30 years, and as you look at goats here, these are Jan Kelley's goats. My goats look very similar because they don't come with ears. And one of the things, did everybody get a handout? Okay, if you didn't have handouts, Dr. Kaiser has some. They're just kind of meant to be a few points on a number of different topics, some of which we may touch on, some of which we may not get to. The idea for the day is we'll talk about some of the things with these species, and I'm going to ask you guys some questions about the sheep and goats that have been here for a good part of the day. Talk about some handling techniques, and then hopefully have some time for questions. So before we start that, I'm going to pass the phone, or it's not the phone, it's the microphone, to our other, the couple of people that are helping me today. First, we're going to start with Judy Richmond, who I think a lot of you have met because you're all attracted to Mary Ann and how social she's been. And she can tell her, kind of her story, Mary Ann's story.
I think you've heard part of Mary Ann's story from Dr. Kaiser. But I started doing pet therapy with my dogs about 7 years ago. And I was taking baby lambs, and occasionally when we had like an orphan lamb, I would take an orphan lamb in, and they just loved the lambs. But unfortunately, the lambs would get too big too fast. 1 or 2 trips in, they'd be too big to take in. So I thought, I think a Nigerian dwarf would be really nice. They grow slow, and they stay small. They're little enough I could stick them in the car. So I got a little newborn Nigerian dwarf while he was a pup. And I started taking him in. Well, about a year or 2 after I was doing this with Gilligan, Mary Ann became a patient of Dr. Kaiser's. And she had been attacked by a dog, and the dog had done severe damage to her leg and her udder. And Jan Kelley took care of her for a year under the instruction of Dr. Kaiser. And the 2 of them started in on me. Gilligan needs a friend. We have this goat. She would be wonderful therapy goat. She would be a great stablemate for Gilligan. So after a year of listening to this, I finally agreed to take Mary Ann on a trial basis. And Gilligan wasn't really impressed with her. But they've worked out their disagreements, and they coexist now. So I started taking her in with Gilligan into the care facility. And everybody loved her, and she was a natural. She loved the people. She would actually visit with the people, which Gilligan refused to do. His idea of a visit was to stand in the middle of the room looking grumpy for an hour. But Mary Ann actually goes in and she visits with the different residents, and especially the people who had a rural upbringing really love her. And it brings back memories to them, and they talk about their childhoods and the animals they had. she's worked out really well for everyone, and she seems to enjoy going. She gets out of the car and she heads straight for the doors. She's ready to go in and do her job. So I think it benefits all of us.
Come on, man, there are goats that do not wear diapers. Explain the diaper.
Well, the diaper's obvious reasons. Oh, it did take me a while to figure out how to get the diaper to stay on the goat. We tried everything. We tried cutting tail holes, masking tape, duct tape, fancy harnesses. Nothing worked. Finally hit on using sheet suspenders and a collar. But that doesn't seem to bother her to be wearing the diapers, and it saves on a lot of cleanup. So if you decide to take a goat visiting, forget the tail hole. It's just one more place for poop to fall out.
So
Buy
you
yourself.
decided to give back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been an enjoyable experience with Mary Ann. Well, at least on my part it has been. I know Mary Ann kind of disagreed with that.
Do you want to say a little bit about how long you've had your livestock and what you've had and what you do have?
Well, I grew up with sheep. We always had 50 to 100 sheep growing up. And then somebody got me involved with raising research lambs. And I ended up with 300 sheep. And we were lambing intensively. We did that for, I don't know, we did that for 10, 12 years.
It was a long time.
It was a long time raising research lambs. So that's basically my background as a sheep farmer. I've worked with MSU a little bit with Dr. Rook in some studies. The poor little lamb study that we did, that went on for a lot of years too. They were studying the cause of lamb deaths. There's not much else to tell. It's been sheep farming for as long as I can remember. And right now I sold all my wool sheep and I bought hair sheep because we couldn't find a sheep shearer that wanted to come out and shear 6 sheep. So,
Sheep shearer lives up north.
well, my daughter, yeah. My daughter started shearing sheep when she was 12, but it seems that she's always pregnant or has a newborn. So,
You know what causes that, no?
so I switched to the hair sheep, and so far I'm really liking them.
Well, it's your sheep on the brochure. That's your picture.
Oh, I guess on the brochure there's a picture of one of the hair sheep. It's one of the lambs, isn't it? Yeah. Yes. What places can I take my goat? Any place that'll let me. She's basically been to the one facility, and she has gone to the daycare a couple times. There's a daycare in Jackson that invites her to come visit. She spent a couple hours being hauled around by 3- and 4-year-olds. And she seemed to enjoy it as much as them. Actually, I guess she hauled them around more than they hauled her around. They hung onto the leash and she grazed. Any other questions about therapy goats? Okay, guess it's your turn, Jan.
And Jan's walking like that because she happened to break her toe.
And I have to be old. Doesn't help either. I used to be known as the twitchy baby goat mama. I was involved in an autosomal recessive genetic defect involving goats that also we found out has a human component and is also prevalent in the Solaris big giant red cow that I think comes from Texas. I don't know. Where does Solaris come from? France? I don't know. Okay, anyway. My job was to take care of the affected babies until they could, they died of natural causes, which I stayed up 24, sometimes 72 hours in a row, trying to make sure they didn't do that. The one I raised for the longest was about 16 weeks old. And he weighed about 40 pounds. So, but he couldn't get up and walk, and he triggered all the time. And that's part of how I got goats. I actually started with a lamb. And then a veterinarian friend of mine dragged a goat over and said, here, you got a lamb, you need a goat. And 38 years later, I'm still showing up at the university. I guess I haven't learned enough yet. And I do have to say that during that mindfulness meditation thing, I had to get up and leave because it would still be mindlessness for me. You put your hands down, you put your feet on the floor, you kind of close your eyes, and that's it. I would be snoring. But I love my goats. I love having goats. They are not grateful. They will not be grateful. You need to understand that. But periodically, they will burp in your face, and that's about as grateful as they get. Handling these animals, the two different kinds of animals, if your sheep and your goats live together, they will behave differently. But because we have strange sheep and strange goats, they are not going to be a compatible chase around at all. How many of you work for a humane society or rescue organizations or nobody? No?
There's a few
Not
there.
one?
Over that.
2, 3. You need to know this because somebody like Lena Kaiser is going to show up at your doorstep and say, I have a goat here that the dogs ate. You have to fix her. Here's your medicine. Do it. And now you are going to know how to do it too. Because at least Marianne was somewhat hobbled. She could walk. She could kind of semi-jump. And I do have to say that there's actual hair on her legs. I am so surprised. Because even a year after her injury, she had no hair. And I thought that was the end of that. She's just going to be bald as a billion cute. You're on.
The one thing Jan forgot to mention that she is also a 4-H leader and has been a 4-H leader for how many years?
Oh, 35.
For 35 years, she's contributed to 4-H. So she has done an awful lot for the youth, in this state. Now, if you just, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to, the sheep and goats. The goats were here earlier in the day. The sheep came over lunch hour. But if you, watch these guys, most of the time, or at least initially, nobody was laying down. So they were stressed, worried about things. And then as, time kind of went on, you'll see a number of them laying down, but I don't know if at any point in time they were all laying down. There was always somebody kind of standing up, kind of acting on, guard, is there going to be anything going on? Sheep and goats are prey animals. Most of our herbivores, our large animal herbivores, are prey animals. They do not want to demonstrate weakness, and they always want to be ready to leave, because that's survival, in their books. And one of the things that, during break periods, after lunch when they came in, and last break, people would come up over here and they would feed Marianne, and Marianne is into getting into lunch boxes, her corn, anything you feed her. Where these guys too, because they're very handleable, they've been raised around people, and work with, basically on a daily basis. If I come over here, where are the goats? They're right next to the fence. If I were to get food out, Jen had some crackers here earlier, they'd all be climbing up the side of the fence, looking for attention. Now, not all goats are as friendly as these guys. And if you look at them, they're going, oh, they don't like me. So take something, but even that, when Jan was handing out crackers, Jan, come over here and hand him a cracker. And this is something when people say animals don't recognize, different people or anything, mine will react differently, whether I'm wearing these clothes into the barn. Try this white one in front, because she was the one that refused me.
You're right.
See, she just says, I don't like you, I don't know you, I don't trust you. Where
The thing is now, yeah, you can't do it for one if you're not gonna do it for them all. And Harley will lay on your hand.
Harley's just kind of sitting down here. So sheep are not going to be as likely to come over and interact with you if they don't know you. But even goats, if they don't know you and they're friendly, may not interact with you. So they recognize different people. And as I said, they recognize even me if I'm wearing my barn clothes or I come, from home from work and I dash up to the barn really quick. The other thing, when you walk over and look at these sheep, if I walk here, where do they go? They head for the back. I just strolled over. I didn't even, go to move if I moved fast. I didn't do much, but it was enough to startle them. If I did that same kind of movement over here, I doubt I'm going to get the same response. Because even though, okay, everybody came over to see what's going on. Because they're used to being around people, even though I'm a stranger. So sheep and goats tend to have, different temperament. These were meat goats, and not used to being people, they were much more like sheep, where I made a sudden movement and they'd be gone. We're going to give some crackers to Mary Nance. She's going to enjoy those immensely. A couple of other things, when we were talking about, and Judy talked about the fact she started off with wolf sheep and is now a hare sheep. People should pick their sheep or goats to meet their needs. And, one of the slides on your handout talks about why, individuals might have animals. So if you want them for companions, you want them for therapy goats, you want them for young children, you're probably looking at something smaller. If you're looking at meat, you're looking for something larger. So it depends a lot on what animals you want and why you have them. And one of the things that, as I deal with people that have, especially goats even more so than sheep, is they tend to reproduce really well. So you have one today, and at 5 months, you might have 2, you might have 3, you might have 4, or if you're lucky, you might even have 5, or maybe a couple more. And then what are you going to do with them? Because it's often really hard, even when you raise them, and I raise them for meat, to understand that either I have babies and I like having babies, or I want babies, but what's going to happen to the adults? So you have to have some plans. You have to talk to your clients about having plans. The people that are here from the shelters, I'm sure that they can all give you stories about how they found X number of goats running down the roadside. And then they end up in the shelter or at the veterinarian because they've been chewed on by a dog, because they are prey animals, and dogs are devastating, more so than even coyotes and wolves and everything, because they have closer contact. Or somebody just turned them loose because they didn't want them anymore, or they got out because they were hungry and they're starving. So those aren't, basically good, animal welfare, for those animals. The other thing with handling animals, and people talked about it today, being calm, being relaxed, providing adequate care. If your heart rate is up, if your body language says worry, animals are very good at reading body language. And that's been proven with heart rate monitors on a human and an interacting animal, that the heart rate's going to go up if our heart rate goes up when we handle them. So we need to pay attention to those type of things. And if Judy or Jan has any comments as I'm going on, please grab the microphone away from me. Or if anybody has any comments, come on up or put your hands up as we go through a couple of these aspects. I was interested in Dr. Reynolds' comment about, docking sheep and cattle tails. Always was told you had to dock sheep tails. If you look at these guys over here, they have pretty short tails. And any sheep that come from people that have done showing tend to dock quite short, sometimes to the point they have no tail. As Dr. Reynolds talked about, a lot of sheep maybe dock longer, so they have a little bit of a tail. And then you get lazy veterinarians like myself. When my first son was born, somehow I didn't spend as much time in the barn as I had previously. And my lambs never got docked. And guess what? I've not had any maggot problems. I shouldn't say that. I had one lamb that had some maggots around its tail area after getting diarrhea, but that was one lamb in 30 years. And I typically have about 100 lambs at least a year. So even after I got to the point where maybe I had a little more time in life, maybe, I have not docked my sheep's tails. And I have now, not noticed any difference in reproductive efficiency, in animals getting diarrhea. As I said, I had one case of maggots around the tail head out of about 30 years of at least 100 lambs per year.
What about dystocias?
Dystocias?
Yeah.
Whether they have or don't have a tail? Hasn't made any difference as far as I can figure out. Goats have tails and they don't have any more dystocias than sheep, at least to my knowledge. Cows have tails, horses have tails. But I thought that was an interesting comment from Dr. Reynolds and the fact that, it was an accident. I started doing it, I felt guilty, really, really guilty. I wouldn't even admit it for a couple of years because sheep were supposed to have docked tails. Now it's kind of like, oh well, the shearer doesn't like me, it's a little hard to shear around those tails, but I don't feel bad about having to dock their tails, and they just go along with their tails. The other thing about sheep and goats, I don't have any grain here. These guys are, pretty social eaters, but both my sheep and goats, the way I know they're normal is either they're running so fast towards me because I have food in my hand, I'm going to get knocked over. Or if I'm trying to do something with them, especially for the sheep, they're running that fast the opposite direction. And if they're not doing that, you need to pay attention to them. Because a healthy animal should be very interactive in the fact that they're going to, as I walked over to that sheep pen and they went away from me. They know I'm there. They don't want me to be there. If I walk in the pen, and I should be able to use body language on these guys to just get them to move away from me. See what they do as soon as I come into this pen? They're already moving away from me. And if I just quietly move, they're going to move, hopefully, where I want them to go, without spending very much time getting them to move there. And now they're starting to feel stressed and threatened. If I were to move into this pen fast, they might be moving faster out of the pen right over top of me. So if I can, we're just going to close this up on these guys and let them sit here for a little bit. We'll probably play with the sheep because we can see the people from the sheep barn are already here. I told them to be back at about, 4:45, 5 o'clock to take them home. And if I'm going to handle these sheep, and if you watch them, all I had to do was walk in here, and I walked in really quiet. Yes, they can hear my voice in the microphone, but this near sheep, she really was starting to get worried about the effort. She's starting to, jump and want to move away. If I'm going to try and catch these guys, it's going to be a lot harder if I try to catch them in this pen with them having this space. And this is where I'm going to take, get Judy and Jan to help me. Typically, we wouldn't use what we're going to use here, but it'll work. And you can just see these guys move away from us. They're not very happy. And the best way to handle animals that are apprehensive with you is, one, you use your body language to move them, but two is get them as tight and pinned up as you possibly can, because they're going to be less stressed if we can get these guys, closed up, proximity-wise. So I'm going to put the microphone down for a little bit, and we're going to try and catch a sheep here, hopefully not too much difficulty. So you can see this is a lot easier way to go, and typically we wouldn't use a table. I'd use some kind of cattle paneling or something, but you always make do with what you have. And this works a lot better crowding them this way than trying to chase them around this pin and catch them. They're getting stressed. Sheep, if they bounce, they can actually hurt you when they hit you. So just by crowding them up like this, we can take our pins and we can work with these animals as a group or individually. If you're lucky enough to have a lot of sheep in a chute complex, that's nicer because you can funnel them through a chute complex just like beef cattle. But even if you only have 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 sheep, you can get them pinned into a smaller pin, crowd them up, and go ahead and work on them. And so what we're going to do, now I'm just going to pick one of these guys, and depending upon your size and the sheep size, it may vary a little bit how you get them to sit down on their butt. But you can get them to sit on their butt, and you can examine them and trim their feet, and we're going to see who wins, me or the sheep here. We're going to try and see if we keep the mic on and work at the same time and not sit that up and not sit on my butt. The one thing about handling small ruminants is they have a stop button and a go button. This is the stop button. I hold up on their chin. So that's the brakes. The button is the accelerator. And you use that to your advantage. Somebody also today said, oh, look at the dirty sheep. Well, the only time you ever see a clean sheep is for about 3 seconds after they're sheared. And as soon as they go out and they lay down or do anything, they're in the dirty sheep. So if you drive down a pasture and you see a clean sheep, it just means they just got a haircut because they don't stay clean very long. So if I'm 6'2" and 220 pounds, I can pick this sheep up and just set it right down on its butt. That's not going to happen with me. So what I'm going to do is try and back her out of here a little bit. She's going to back. And I'm going to take her head, and I'm going to crank her head right down to her flank area, and at the same time push on her, and see who falls first. And it's good because she fell first. Then roll her up and sit her on her butt. And at this point in time, she's not very happy, she tells you, but she's not stressed right. Chased her around this head 50 million times. My heart rate isn't up. Hopefully her heart rate isn't up too high. She'll sit and relax into this. I can look at her feet. I can trim her feet if I need to. Nice to have somebody else if I was going to have, I can do her hind feet as well. It's hard with one person. But I can, I can look at her, I can examine her.
Giddy up, Captain.
processes. Ventral. And if you get them up and sitting, you can do it by yourself. You can lock her head behind you, find her trachea, isolate her jugular vein, and go ahead and you can collect blood by yourself. Or it is nicer to have somebody helping you, so one person holds the sheep and the other person goes ahead and trims feet, draws blood, does the physical exam. But you can do it by yourself without getting her too stressed out about the procedure. And she's complaining a lot, but she's okay. Also, because parasites are a major concern, and especially Homoncus, the blood-sucking parasite, you can go ahead and look at her eyelids this way as well and make sure she's not anemic. So very easy to go ahead and look at her eye color, and she's nice and pink. So with very minimal facilities, and that's the nice thing about small ruminants, you don't need a lot of facilities to have them. So people that have a small amount of land can have livestock if they so choose for whatever purpose. And with minimal facilities, a pen that's solid and protected against carnivores, and some kind of a squeeze gate, you can go ahead and work on these animals without any problem. And other than a little corn cob in her, she says, I want to get back to my buddies. A little corn cob on her and a little bit of wet sheep on me, neither one of us are any worse for the wear. Anybody have any questions on handling sheep? And the smaller the breed, the easier to handle. The bigger the breed, a little harder to handle, just depending on the size of the handler. And if there's no questions about them, we may just run these guys out because the students from the sheep barn, I think, would like to get them home. Yeah. You're okay? Okay, well, we'll go over and play with the goats here for a second. But just watch them. They are not very pleased about having somebody in there. Even as we leave, they're anxious and not very relaxed. If we go over and, Jan goes ahead and picks on one of these girls here, just watch her lead one of these girls out.
Come on, Betty.
Totally different. Would never have thought about letting one of those sheep out like that, because that sheep would be in the next county. The goat, she's just going to go over and look and see what equipment we have over here.
Oh, there's food over there.
And, for trimming feet, I really like these little orange or red nippers. They're actually tree trimmers. They are light, easy to handle if you have smaller hands. And we'll demonstrate trimming feet on a goat because you don't have to set them on their butts. Goats do not like to be set on their butts. They very much, detest, that aspect. And I'll also show you how you can do this on sheep too, but sheep are going to, try to get away from you more, draw blood by yourself as well with a goat. So if you want to hang on to that, Mary. So basically,
You just want to keep them comfortable.
for trimming feet is, these are going to be done more like a horse. You can just reach over and go ahead, and all you do is trim the wall off that's extra. And see, she doesn't really mind it. And once they had their feet trimmed once or twice, then they're pretty comfortable doing this. You can do this on a milk stand, you can do it on the floor, not a big deal. If you're doing hind feet and you have the front end attached to a human or the milk stand, what I've done for hind feet a lot of times, which works really well, as long as you have the height that the goat doesn't, is get right over top of them. And so now they're holding on to the sheep's front end. I can keep her from swinging on the hind end, and then go ahead and pick up a hind foot. And go ahead and trim her foot.
This is not unlike Laurel and Hardy, isn't it?
So she's very comfortable along that line. Not going to upset her, even if she's not used to being handled that much. Goats that are not handled are still better off left on their feet rather than trying to throw them on their butt. If I'm going to draw blood from her,
Oh my, look, a bare patch, right where her jugular vein is.
and the reason for that is that Jan's herd is CAE negative. She tests on an annual basis. So that was because she had, you know,
I was teaching 4-H kids how to bleed, and I kept saying, you can feel it, you can feel it. You don't need to see it, you can feel it. Finally, they said, we need to see it. So, took a little hair off.
And
It's not
if-
gonna freeze.
Yeah, and if I'm going to bleed an animal, prefer to put him in a corner again. Here, just watch that, I'll kick you, Jan. I'm going to go ahead and straddle the other end of the goat. And the nice thing about this is, remember, small ruminants don't need very much for facilities. I am now a chute. Close my knees down. It's hot, just like sticking a cow in a chute. If I'm going to bleed this goat, preferably I stick her in a corner where I can do her by myself. Again, just like the sheep, I cradle her head. With the same hand as I hold the jugular vein off. Feel the jugular vein. I go ahead and put my needle in. And so people will vary, you know, Jan
This
likes
is like rubbing your head and patting your stomach.
Jan likes to bleed with a syringe and needle, and I'm not going to stick her today. I like a vacuum holder, and you know, but it really doesn't make any difference. You can hold it.
Oh, you did bring a vacuum cleaner needle.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was
good
going to
on
put it
you.
in. But this is almost, most of you would probably see this goat's vein from right there. It stands out like, basically, you know, like a highway, where you let that go, and away it goes.
Honey, there aren't any stupid questions. I have asked everyone.
But first, so actually,
Yeah.
here, just a second. Come on, Sweet Pea. Everybody's Sweet Pea to me, and every once in a while I'm right. So for Jan's goats, she wouldn't care if I cranked her head around there. If you're dealing with a goat in the clinic that's coming in stressed, or an animal that's not that used to being around people, again, I do my straddle, and goats have the same stop and go buttons, hold head up, you know, push on tail. She's wide enough, it's hard to get her to even back up. Most of them are running backwards by now.
There might be food somewhere else.
So basically, you back them in the corner, and then they now can no longer go backwards. Out of the aisle there, they can go backwards on me. In a stall, they can't go backwards. I can control the head. I can control the front legs because I'm basically being a chute. And again, I can hold off the rein, or my person is doing the bleeding. I'm restraining, and somebody else is drawing the blood. But it's just a nice, easy way to restrain a small ruminant. Like I said, lambs and things aren't a big deal. Those sheep, if I did that, they could probably take me for a nice ride. So I'm much happier with them on their butts. But goats don't go down on their butts. They get very, upset about that.
And if you give a sheep a haircut on their butt, that's fine. Don't try to do it with a goat. It just won't work.
And for those of you that may or may not have ever been around camelids, they're actually tied down when they are sheared, for the most part. They actually have like a shearing board or something, because they don't appreciate being laid down either, but they're actually tied down.
By the way, these are, you notice on the sheet there are 2 tags in their ears. One is a scrapey tag with an MIB whatever, and the other one is a flock ID tag. You cannot move, or theoretically should not move, animals anywhere, the small ruminants, the sheep and goats, without a scrapey tag, the only exception being registered animals. They are tattooed, and then they're
will be tattooed in the ear, although some milking parlors will tattoo everything in the tail web because that end shows up. Easiest to read in a milking parlor. Udder and tail are pretty close together when it comes to, looking at IDs. What do we not talk about? Judy or Dan, what else? Anybody got any
Well,
questions?
if you're running a rescue, or you have a veterinary practice, and you have barking dogs and a goat, please do not house the goat with the barking dog. I mean, it just makes sense, but I have seen it done. They figure the only big pen we've got is the St. Bernard pen, and it's right next to a giant Dalmatian. If you think that your heart rate is a little fast when you get nervous, imagine if you were a prey species and the Dalmatian was right next door. You have to, we're talking animal welfare, animal well-being. This, I think, more comes under the well-being. They're already stressed, they're already out of their environment. You need to take care of them as best you can, and even if that means putting them in a closet as opposed to a large dog pen next to a large dog, I go for the closet. I would keep the light on in the closet, but other than that, you guys have been really patient with us. I don't have initials behind my name or anything. I just own goats. And it's really been fun watching and interacting with you guys today. You are all so full of enthusiasm. It's like, I want some of that.
Yeah, we all got to model what you guys have.
Absolutely.
Because, you don't realize how much you need to appreciate it until you get older, and that's too late. But with that, if there's no questions, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Kaiser.
Thanks, Judy. Does anybody have any questions? All I remember about small ruminants in veterinary school is that they were given to us as one species. We're going to do small ruminants. So this was good. We lined them up. Okay. I think we have reached the end of our conference for today. If any of you have any ideas for speakers or concepts or topics, you can email me at kaiser@msu.edu. I'm delighted that all of the first-year students and the Colorado teen students and all the rest of the students that stayed for this conference, I hope you enjoyed it, and drive safe the